Biblical allusions in Of Mice and Men. So, the biblical story of Eden, for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, goes something like this. Adam and Eve are the very first two people on earth, first two humans on earth, and they lived in paradise where everything they wanted they could have, and there was no pain, no suffering, no death, nothing that was bad, everything that was good. It was paradise. And the only rule was that they could not eat this apple. It's a forbidden apple. And so, of course, they do eat the apple. And then, because they eat the apple, all of humanity forever is sentenced to pain and suffering and death. So, this very first scene from Of Mice and Men, the very first words, uh, is an excellent example of imagery, but also it is a description of paradise. The most beautiful place, the most beautiful scenery in the world. So this is Eden, and George and Lenny have left Eden, as have all the rest of the ranch hands, as have everyone else, and they have a dream to return to paradise, and their dream is to buy a little farm. And here on page 58 is an excerpt of George describing this farm. But there's actually several of these throughout the book. There's many of them. And so every time George tells the story of the farm that they're going to buy and how perfect it's going to be, he's describing paradise. He's describing a return to Eden. When they discuss this with Crooks kind of lets the cat out of the bag. He says it's just like heaven. This farm that you're talking about is just like heaven. Well, it is heaven. It's Eden. It's paradise. Nobody ever gets to heaven, and nobody gets no land, Crooks says. But then, moments later, Crooks wants in on the deal. He wants to go back to Eden too. Everyone does. So Slim sort of represents a God figure. I'm not saying that Slim is God, just like I'm not saying that Salinas Valley is Eden, but represents. It's an illusion. It's a what would you call that? It's a suggestion of God. So if you look at the entire description of Slim on page 33 to 34, we also see words like God-like eyes. Slim's God-like eyes fastened to him. George takes on a tone of confession. Slim's opinions are law, or were law. So what Slim says goes. The majority of the U.S. was Protestant in the 1930s when Of Mice and Men was written. And we have this concept of the Protestant work ethic. The Protestant work ethic means that the harder you work and the better you are at your job, the closer to heaven you get. And the more likely it is you are going to go to heaven once you die. This is Slim. Slim is going to go to heaven. Slim might actually be a representation of God. He might be a model for the rest of the ranch hands who want to go to heaven. All right, but then you have the apple. You have temptation, and this is women in general, and Curly's wife more specifically. You see Curly's wife there depicted in the movie. She's actually wearing a red dress. The girl in Weed was wearing a red dress. Lenny can't help but to try to pick this apple. This apple is going to send him straight to hell. This apple is going to sentence George to a life of pain and misery, and eventual death. I should add that just as earlier we described Lenny as a dog, this is a function of a story. These aren't literal people. We're not saying that women send people to hell, but we are saying that the women in this story, Aunt Claire, with the exception of Aunt Claire, the women in Of Mice and Men do function as temptation. And the world is not Eden. There's many examples of this throughout the book of how the world is harsh. And all of these men are up against the harshness of the world. And I think a really great example of this is this scene where Slim is discussing with the rest of the men that he drowns 4 of his puppies, and nobody even blinks an eye. In fact, they just say, "Oh, you still got 5, huh?" "Yeah, I kept the biggest." And they start discussing who's going to get some puppies. if your friend came to you at lunchtime and said, "Hey, my dog had 9 puppies yesterday and I drowned 4 of them," I think you'd probably go get a trusted adult. The fact of the matter is, it's a harsh world. Of Mice and Men, the setting of Mice and Men is tough. And if the mother dog can't support all 9 puppies, they need those dogs to work on the farm. And so that means that we're going to have 5 dogs. And that's just what that means. It's not paradise. It's not heaven.